Hello everybody, it's Tommy and welcome back to another Create a Sim for the Disney Save. Today we're going to be making some townies that are themed after the movie Luca, and these guys are going into Tartosa just as a couple of quick townies. We have 3 today. I'll be making Luca's parents, Lorenzo and Daniela, and then I'll also be making the antagonist of the film slash the bully. His name is Ercole. Starting out first with Daniela, I want to take like a moment here to use this video to complain a little bit about Luca's parents. Not that the writing of them is done poorly or anything like that. They're just like stereotypical parents in Disney media that I absolutely can't stand. It's a personal pet peeve of mine. Like, I'm not complaining about the movie at all. I just think that these 2 parents are like borderline terrible parents, and I'm gonna explain why a little bit. In the film, one of the premises as a part of the story is that they find out their son Luca is going onto land, and they're really scared for him because they think he's going to be hunted or won't really fit in with society, and it's implied that sea creatures do not spend time on land because they're fearful for those very reasons. And obviously Luca is breaking the rules, and he makes some friends that his parents do not approve of, and he also runs away. He's at that age where it's like very prevalent, but also it's a part of the story. So when they find out that he's going to land, one of the reactions that particularly his mother has, and the dad is kind of complicit in it and goes along with allowing it to happen, is that they're going to send him away to live with his uncle in the deep, deep sea, where they basically live in complete black darkness and do nothing. And it's like their way of teaching him a lesson. It's just sending him away. It's like that classic Disney storyline of you're misbehaving, we don't know how to deal with it, and we're going to send you away to live in a place that is absolutely horrible that we personally would not go to. And then that's why Luca decides to run away. It's so creepy and dark, and the way they explain it is like borderline barbaric, and it makes them look like just absolutely bonkers parents. They then proceed to try to track him and follow him on land and stalk the entire town and cause mayhem, and like don't really recognize their son in the human form. Luca sees them from a distance and recognizes his 2 parents immediately, even though he has never seen them. Like, he knows those are my mom and dad, and they don't know who their son is or what he looks like. They end up terrorizing the town and going around and messing with all of the children that live in the town because they're trying to identify which one is their son. I always found it really funny that they don't know who their kid is. Like, I know he comes in a different form and he physically looks different, so they are confused, but Luca knows without seeing them prior exactly what his parents look like because they just give off that energy. He knows that's my mom and dad, and the same cannot be said for their son. They also make him like kind of work every day and like not allow him to explore his interests, and very much make him like work on the family farm, and he's not allowed to do things outside of like what they want him to be doing. So you could say that they're extremely strict in that way as well. Strict parents is always something that really like bothers me and gives me cringe and like secondhand embarrassment in media, specifically like when I watch Turning Red. It's totally a part of the story, and it's also something that really like bothers me. However, it's true, obviously. Like, a lot of people grow up with super strict parents, and some of the storyline that gets depicted in like how rash the decision making is on the child's part is something that is totally true to real life as well. So it is a real story that they're telling, and something that I think a lot of people can relate to. I just think that these 2 parents in particular go like completely over the top with it, and they make the most drastic decision, and they're kind of like, in my opinion, more of the antagonist of the film than even Ercole in a lot of ways, specifically for Luca. When we were designing the original versions of Tartosa, it was brought up quite a bit to possibly do these guys as their own residential, so have Luca live with his parents. And I think if Tartosa had some water facing lots, or I was able to make them like an underwater home because we had like more of those water lots like we do in Sulani, I probably would have opted for that and done some kind of like an underwater cave of sorts if I could have gotten away with it. There was the one lot, the last video that I just did, that is on the beach and faces the water, and that probably would have been the one had we gone that route. But since these 2, even though they kind of like kick off the story and are obviously Luca's parents, so they're important in that way, they're not super important to the rest of the story. They are not important to like the story between Alberto and Luca, or Julia and the rest of them, and they're not important to the end result ultimately as well. So even though this is sort of a rare circumstance, I think that it makes sense that maybe Luca wouldn't live with these 2 characters, and we can have them be townies so that he can have like the genetics with them and have them sort of around, but he doesn't ultimately live with them at the end of the film anyway, so I thought that they worked better as townies for those reasons. I did go ahead and take my Luca sim and start out by using the genetics of Luca to make his parents. That usually works out pretty well depending on how much they the character actually looks like their parents. And I think in this instance, he really does. He looks like a great combination between the two of them. Like, I noticed that Luca has his father's nose. His mother has more of a unique face shape and nose in comparison to her son, but you can tell in the way that they did the skin tone that he's definitely supposed to be a mix of both of them in the monster form. Luca is a blue and green ombre skin tone in his sea monster form. So his mother has a blue skin tone and the father has a green skin tone, so you can kind of see where it like mixed together there. The mother also has blue fins and blue hair, so he got a lot of those features from her as well. And I believe they have the same color eyes in their sea monster form. Something that was really cool about his mother is Daniela actually wears like kind of a dress, and it's made out of sea kelp or something like that. And I was able to find a top that is knitted and kind of gives that same vibe, and it goes really well with like her color palette overall. Couldn't give her a full body dress because they don't allow that in the mermaid form, but it still works with what I was able to do. Lorenzo is the father. He does not have nearly as many lines in the film. He's kind of a distant dad. He's very distracted by things, and I think that he's just like absorbed in his own little world, or follows her example, especially when raising Luca. So he was like a little bit more difficult to make in terms of just like, he's often drawn like slightly behind her or in the background. Like, he's not as prevalent in the film. When they're going around, even in their human form, there wasn't as much art and reference to go off of because he's more of like a passive character. But I think I was able to pull it off overall. Luca in his human form, I think resembles his father more. So they look very similar in their human form, whereas Luca in his sea monster form tends to look a little bit more like his mother. So that was kind of a unique thing. Lorenzo also wears a blue hat, and I did not have a blue hat that I could find that was the same shape. In the video, at least, at the very end, I did find one from a different pack that I was happy with. So in this video, he doesn't have the right color hat, but I did end up getting him a blue hat of his own. Believe it or not, as far as I can think ahead, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I like often think about the future of the save file and characters that are to come, maybe occults that are to come. I don't believe I'll be doing too many more mermaids. It's possible that we could squeeze some in here and there. It's also possible that Disney could release some new content that requires me to do mermaids, but I think with Luca, that might be kind of the end. The only other thing I can think of that might be coming up is if we do some Finding Nemo content, it's very likely that I would make a lot of those characters probably mermaids, since there's no other real format to do them in. And I've talked about that before with patrons and things, so off the top of my head, these might be some of the last mermaid characters for the foreseeable future, especially because I don't really know where I would put Finding Nemo currently, and I would like to include it in the save file, but there's been a lot of debate about like exactly where or how to include them. It would be super nice if we maybe could get an Australian world. That would be exceptionally perfect, and we would plop them right in there. But as it stands right now, these guys might be some of the last additions to our collection of mermaids for the Disney save, for a while at least. Moving on to our final Luca character, the main antagonist from the film. His name is Ercole, and he is a teen that is kind of like the bully of the town, and in particular does not like Julia and Alberto and Luca and thinks there's something really weird about them. He's also sort of like pretentious, very snobbish, materialistic, and somebody that doesn't get along with them because obviously the other characters are not like that. I made a comment in my patron Discord that I generally thought that these guys were supposed to be a very similar age. Like, I thought he was just one of those teenagers that looks like an adult for some reason. He has more sunken in features, and he just has this particular look about his face that makes him look like a mid-20s man, even though he is a teenager. And then somebody pointed out that there is a line from the film where I think it's Julia that comments that he is actually older than them by a lot, and she doesn't understand why he's allowed to like interact or hang out with them or enter in the same competitions as them. And I think the difference is like probably somewhat significant. Like, if you think of Luca and Julia and Alberto as being maybe 12, 13, 14, I think he's supposed to be like 16, 17, 18. So it's really weird that he goes around bullying these younger children and nobody does anything about it, and a lot of people are actually complicit in the behavior. Ultimately, he still fits really well as a teen for that reason. It's always nice to have an additional teen sim in the save, since I don't often get to do too many, and I can't think of too many off the top of my head that are teens that are more on like that antagonistic side. So he's a great new addition. I think I was able to pretty much nail his look overall, his face shape in particular, and then I was super happy to find an outfit that was so similar to the one that he wears. He has like that stereotypical look of like this sweater tied over his shoulders and really nice boat shoes and some like higher end or nicer designer shorts, like things like that. He clearly comes from a family with a lot of money. He has his hair gelled back and he's a total brat, so it's a nice new like type of character to have, since all of the other Luca characters, at least I would say besides Luca's parents, are very normal, very kind, very like generally good, simple characters, whereas Ercole is definitely not. There are some others that are shown in the film. Ercole kind of has like two henchmen, if you will, friends of his own that are a part of his like bullying process. I did not include them. I don't think that they're super necessary. I think you could totally forget about them. And I am ultimately like not keen on including every single character from every single movie. I think that just doing, especially for smaller movies like this that maybe aren't as popular, the main characters, that being ones that are like important for genetic reasons or important to the storytelling, whereas those other side characters are not. That's the same reason why I didn't do Luca's grandmother or Luca's uncle. Although they're a part of the story, I just don't think you necessarily need them in like the storytelling process. So I opted to not do them this time. I hope that makes sense. With all that being said, that is the end of the Luca content. I'm so excited to be moving on to the final film for Tartosa, which will be Atlantis. The final lot in Tartosa will be a like mini recreation of Atlantis. And I say mini because the lot itself is very small, so it's not going to be like a full-scale castle, but we are going to be doing that, and I will have like Milo and Kita living there. There will be some Townies from the film as well, so we have a couple of Atlantis videos to come, and then we'll be all done with Tartosa. Let me know what you thought of today's characters in the comment section down below, and if you'd like to support the Disney Save on Patreon, you can do so by clicking the link in my description box down below or the one at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will talk to you all in the next one.